I'd like to call this special Quorum Court meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to continue working on items pertaining to the 2016 budget process. The prayer and the pledge is going to be handled by J.P. Ann Harbison. J.P. Harbison.
Oh God, give us the courage to do what is right for the people of Washington County and guide us in this budget process. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, J.P. Harbison. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Rick Cochran.
Here.
Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ecke.
Here.
Ann Harbison.
Here.
Sharon Lloyd.
Here.
Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison.
Here.
Joe Maxwell.
Here.
Gary McHenry.
Here.
Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Joe is having knee surgery today, so he will not be here. I know he's real glad to be able to get this done, so we'll also be thinking about him in our prayers. Next thing we have is the adoption of the agenda, and due to a scheduling conflict, Judge Zimmerman has requested to be moved up in the agenda. The review of the 2016 budget request will begin with the Circuit Court Division 3, following by the Detention, Juvenile Office, and the Circuit Court Automatic Budget. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Are you representing Judge Zimmerman?
I am. She is finishing up her last two cases, so hopefully she'll...
Okay, we'll just go right ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Norma Frisbee. I'm the Director of Juvenile Court Services for Juvenile Court.
What we normally do, you're welcome to make any statement, or you can just allow the court to start asking you questions that they'd like to inquire about, however you want to do it.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to just point out that on line item 3009, we have requested an additional $10,000. That's other professional services, but we have also reduced, I think, close to that amount in other line items to be able to make the budget as even as possible, to not request any actual additional funds. Some of the line items that we have reduced are under small equipment, medicine.
Hang on just a moment, Norma. I'd like to let the court know that go to pay 123 and 124. I'm sorry, I should have told you that. Now go proceed, Norma.
Yes. I was just explaining the line items that we have reduced money in to try and cover that extra $10,000 that we need in other professional services. The other professional services, I would like to explain, goes to cover some of our diversion programs as far as instructors that we need to teach our programs and any other contract people that we need for, such as interpreters for marshallese. They come in and help us with our meetings, not necessarily in courts, because the AOC only provides court interpreters. So we do have to contract out for those kind of services.
Okay. Are you ready for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for Judge Zimmerman's office? Yes, J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. By being first, you're going to get the questions that probably everybody should get. But
yes, ma'am.
Since this is the first time I'm going through these sorts of budgets in a long time, I do have some questions. And I'm sure there's good explanations, but I just need to know. Medicine and drugs, your actual expenditures this year have been $988, but you're requesting $2,500.
I went from previous years. It looks like previous years we've spent around $2,000, a little bit over $2,000. So I'm not sure why this year was so low. Actually, hold on. Let me look at the most recent.
Well, just tell me what kind of medicine.
That's through June, yes.
What kind of medicine and drugs does the court supply to people?
That is our first aid kit.
It's a first aid kit.
Yes. We
Same
have
as the sheriff.
Yes, we have a separate line item for actual drug screens that we purchase that separately.
Okay, where is that?
That is down on line item 3007.
Okay, yeah, I did mark that one. Okay, now let's talk about your food budget. That's 2005. It's more than anybody else, I think.
That covers that goes to our diversion programs. We have several diversion programs, and we provide food for every program. Some of our programs, such as our Creating Lasting Family Connections, are held in the evenings, and we provide dinner for them. Whenever one of our program graduates, we provide a meal to promote the program and congratulate them for that. That is something that we have been trained on our diversion programs because we deal with family and kids. We have their court order to come to our evening classes from 5 to 8, and they're not home to be able to provide or make dinner, so we provide that. It's pizza, but sometimes we have up to 20 families, and that's where the money goes to.
You're providing pizza?
Sometimes pizza, sometimes sandwiches. That's our cheapest budget that we can do.
And how many people are you feeding?
It varies. Our program runs year-round. We have a keto, HOFNOD, CLFC. We have our summer program, and
do all the juvenile courts in Arkansas supply food for
they
families?
have various programs. These are our programs, but yes, most of them provide at least some type of meal, beverages, or something.
Do staff participate in the meals?
No. We only have our diversion coordinator that goes and makes sure that the program is run well, and then we have instructors that teach it. Those come from the other professional services, and they only get paid for their services. This is to feed the families.
Okay, tell me what dues and memberships go for.
That is for our staff to be certified. They have to continue their continue ed classes every year, and so we pay their membership dues.
Well, the actual this year was $1,080, but you're only asking for $1,000. Did you drop a membership?
Which line item is that?
3090. No, I'm looking at the wrong. No, that's right. 3090. I mean, I'm not trying to give you more money than you asked for.
Right. And you said we dropped $1,000?
No, you dropped $80.
$80. We were just trying to reduce.
And that may have been half the year?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I have some mixed feelings about the county supplying food for people, even if it's in a setting that would expect food. I don't think any of the other departments are supplying food.
I understand. We are looking into grants for next year to help us expand our programs. We've had a lot of additional problems out of this city of Springdale, where we're going to need to expand more services for our youth there, but we are looking into grants for next year.
Well, I suspect the people you serve really appreciate the meal, but it still causes me to stop and think. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Harbison.
I'll take a deep breath and let it out slowly. The meal is a very, 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 very important in this diversion program. I helped with this 10 years ago. Every group that has young people, they know that they have to provide food for them to enjoy and for them to be at the programs. You never had a church youth group that you don't feed. We are trying to change behavior in these families. We're trying to make better citizens. And food is very, very important. Thank you.
J.B. Pond.
We have several new members on the court that don't actually realize what goes on at your programs. And I'd like to try to say this in a way and not... We at this horseshoe, we might not know it, but we're very fortunate possibly to have grown up in a family that realizes the importance of a family sitting down for a meal together and sharing just visiting with one another and knowing what's going on in each other's lives. Some of these families, it's not just the children, the families don't know anything about that. And what some of these programs do is help these families learn to become a functional family. And how it's saving tax money is it keeps more of the children in these families from winding up in our JDC, or keeps them from coming back again. We have adult family members come and thank the folks at JDC for helping them learn how families function. Like I said, we're saving money by not having that JDC at full capacity all the time, and then those children in there just moving and graduating on up to our adult facility. But I don't want to keep going on about this. It probably sounds kind of unbelievable to some of you, but I'm just saying, from what I've seen, these programs work, and I'm gonna say, I understand Ms. Harbison's taken aback by some of the comment and questioning here. She is one of the key people that got this started, and our numbers in JDC stay low, and a lot of it has to do with this. And providing a meal for some of these folks to come in there and learn is a lot less expensive than having that JDC full all the time. Thank you.
I'm going to stop for just a second, and I'm going to recognize our judge. She can move up front if she would like, or if Norma can proceed however she wants to handle it. Judge Zimmerman, it's good to see you. So pull up another chair there if you'd like both of you to sit there.
I'm sorry, I was finishing up my last case and raced over here. So I know that
Go ahead and have a seat.
the Quorum Court certainly is going line by line, and we wouldn't ask for any money, whether it was $50 or $100, if we didn't think it was important to help our kids stay on the right track. And it is really hard to get families to come to a program, and we do it at night. We do it after hours. A lot of these families don't have a lot of money. It's the gas money simply is hard for them to come up with. And to be able to feed them a meal there with their kids while they're learning about how to be a healthy family and communicating with each other. It's not like we're handing out donuts just as a little snack. It's a meal. And I think that shows that we buy into, that we feel these families are important, and that these families need to feel important and be part of these programs. And we tried it in years past where we didn't feed them dinner. It's during the dinner hour. And it just didn't work, and we didn't have the participation that we needed. And so on the front end, you're like, well, you're feeding families. That's not what juvenile court is about. Well, if you look at it that way, it's not. But when you're looking at juvenile court helping families be healthy, learning how to communicate so that they don't get arrested for battering their mother or their father, and they don't go to JDC, in the long run, you have helped that family, you've empowered that family to learn healthy ways to be a family. And if that draw is you're going to get a dinner there and you won't have to worry about dinner that night because we're having it during dinner time, I think it's money well spent. And I'm to the point that I am so sold on this that I'd hate to have to give my paycheck, part of my paycheck, but I guess I would, because that's how strongly I feel about that. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that to be disrespectful, but I just think it's important that for this program that dinner is provided while we're teaching them tools to be more healthy and a more functioning family. You know, I get fired up.
We're going to proceed with our questions now,
Okay.
Judge. J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Good afternoon, Judge Disman and Ms. Brisby. You mentioned a Marshallese population that is growing in Northwest Arkansas.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know that Northwest Arkansas has the largest Marshallese population outside of the Marshall Islands. And if you didn't grow up on the main island, you probably don't speak English, and you don't know very much about hygiene and family relationships because things are so different in the smaller islands. I know that because a lot of my customers are Marshallese, and they work at the plants, and they're entry-level employees. My question is, what is the age of the children that you are feeding? About?
It varies. It can be from, some of our programs, we accept youth from 13 to 17.
Norma, speak into the mic, please, hon. Thank you.
Some of our programs, our youth are age 13 to 17. Some of our other programs can be as young as 9 or 10 to 13 and 14. We try to accommodate the age groups, but in juvenile court hears cases from kids that might be babies all the way to almost 21 years old.
J.P.
It
Harbison.
is, if I may finish, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think you're doing a brilliant job, and this diversion program is what we need in America, investing in the lives of the next generation. And if we can't tell them, you are worth this food, and we will give you something to nourish you, and they probably won't eat until lunch the next day. I mean, I've seen what they eat, and I see that they don't have money. I've experienced it with them, and we say, here, come on in, I know, pay me when you get paid, because they don't have money. They don't know how to manage their money. They don't have these life skills that we do here in the United States. And for them to come and we teach them and you teach them, it just makes me so proud of what you all are doing. And I think that we can feed our children, and we'll make sure we feed our children. So congratulations, good job. Thank you.
J.P. Madison.
I would move
No,
to.
hang on just a moment. Let me make something clear. What we're going to have to do, and then I've visited with the attorney. I'm going to cover the horseshoe, and then I'll come back to people that the second time that'll be. So I'll come back to you, J.P. Harbison. J.P. Madison.
I was just going to move to pass this budget.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. I have some more discussion. J.P. Harbison, go ahead.
Make the motion to pass it.
Okay. Any other, J.P. Madison?
Thank you, Madam Judge. I just want to thank Judge Zimmerman for her passion about this dinner meal. You've more than convinced me. I hope that all of our food budget is spent as importantly as yours is, and thank you for doing that.
Okay, now, I would like a motion to do either roll call or by voice vote.
Madam Judge, I'd like to move that as voice.
Voice vote? Have a second? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, so now we're ready to vote on the first part of Judge Zimmerman's budget. That's Circuit Court number 3. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The next thing we'll move on is the detention judicial offices, and that's going to pay page 143. Judge Zimmerman, you're recognized.
All right. And as the administrative judge now, I'm the one to oversee the budget for the detention. The officer who is Ray Reynolds, who holds the hearings at the jail to assist in our criminal caseload. I know Judge Lindsay is here. He has the bulk of the criminal caseload. And having Ray Reynolds being an officer, the judge that handles those first appearance hearings, it really speeds up the process, gets the defendants moved through the criminal court system, and I believe this is the same amount that was requested in years past. There's not been an increase, and I think that it's a very reasonable request, and the judge that's handling that is Judge Ray Reynolds, who, as you know, is also the district judge in Elkins. So that's what that budget item is for.
J.P. Lundstrom.
I'm going to move we pass this budget.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry.
For Judge Zimmerman, if you could please just explain what these services for us that are new on the court, what are they exactly used for?
Well, the detention judicial officer is a judge, and he hears the first appearance when someone has a criminal case, and he's the first judge that they see, and then we'll set an arraignment date, and then they go and see either Judge Taylor or Judge Lindsay, depending on which case, which judge they're assigned to. And he pays his administrative staff, which I guess is his secretary, and all that comes out of that budget. So that's his strict budget that he uses just for himself in handling these cases for first appearances.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of this budget, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We will move on to the circuit court automation, page 173. Judge Zimmerman?
And this is another budget that I inherited when I became administrative judge, and it's the court automation fund. And some of the charges that you see on that, cell phones, that includes also an iPad, a cell phone for some of the judges that have requested a county paid phone, and that's historically been the case. Also, internet for the iPad and internet for the law library is in that as well. And I think the rest is pretty self-explanatory.
J.P. Madison?
Am I correct that this has its own revenue source somehow? I think this, is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know
hear a
where it
voice. Okay. This is not general fund money, I think is part of it. But Ms. Bollinger said yes, so I'm going to go with yes. We've had some debate over internet connections and who's paying separately for those. Is that something other than community provided? Because IT usually is paying for that.
When we contacted, was it Cheryl? Yes. The internet is for an iPad for, I think, Judge Martin, and then the internet service for the law library. So those are that's what the internet shows on the bills that Ms. Frisbee was able to get. And we have a copy of that, so
Well,
I don't
I'm
know
just
why it's
remembering
divided up.
I'm remembering an email recently where they broke down all those costs, and I thought they decided that they were all within IT. We found some expenses in budgets that were unnecessarily duplicated.
And this may be one.
Well, you have actual expenditures in that item, so I'm not sure.
Well, I know that it's being used for the iPad for Judge Martin.
Okay.
I know that it's being used for the internet for the law library. Now, whether or not the internet for the law library's been billed in somebody else's budget, I don't know.
Ms. Bollinger, do you know what the balance in this fund is? Like
Cheryl,
I know that's probably a treasurer question, but
Judge Beaumont evidently has an answer for us. Let's see.
I was just going to say, I think in the historic courthouse, we pay for our internet usage also. So I don't think that comes out of IT's budget. I know we have actual expenditures for internet. And we don't have any cell phones or any extra county things.
Cheryl, what was your answer?
There's approximately $481 a year is for the data air cards, which obviously is through the internet. Okay. And then the internet charge of approximately $767 is for the law library. It's because they have their own funds. It's not really county money. It's the law library money. And so they pay their own internet charges.
okay. Well, do you know what the balance in this fund is? Because if cell phones could come out of it, we've got other budgets with cell phones, we could move them. I'm looking for non-general fund sources of revenue.
I can tell you.
I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it's an opportunity.
At the end of September, it had $198,615 in it.
That's a lot of money. Okay, well.
Is that all, J.P. Madison?
Yes, thank you, Judge.
J.P. Pond?
Okay, I want to make sure, and I might be asking Cheryl, you said this money's not coming out of the general, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and if this money's not coming out of the general, and IT money comes out of the general, I don't think we want IT paying or taking care of anything that's not coming out of the general, would we not? Is that kind of where we're at on this? Am I making, you understand what I'm?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, that's,
I agree.
okay. Thank you.
J.P. Harbison, I'm sorry, J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Looking at page 52 of our revenue, it shows the 2015 year-to-date October at $205,000. And you look at the 2016 projection at $225,000. So it looks like they have a revenue stream over the next 14 months of $20,000, and they're asking for just under 10. I move to pass this budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of passing this budget, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Judge Zimmerman, we thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Sorry
much.
we rushed you.
No, you were good. Quick, it's good. Thank you.
The next thing we have coming before the court is the law library. And that's going to be page 207 in your budget book. Do we have someone here from the law library? Okay, I guess, Cheryl, are you going to do theirs for them?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I can sort of explain what it is. The library has their own funding through the Act 1256 money. I'm not really sure. I believe at one time they didn't even come through the county, but they had some financial issues of not really being able to track it, and so now the county, it does come through as ordinances, but they do have their own money. It's not county general money. And this is just what they're requesting for the year. And they do have a board that's already met and approved this budget.
J.P. Madison?
I'm curious why they also are paying for what seems like the same internet connection. Do you know if it's the same? Because I thought Judge Zimmerman just said that the automation fund paid for the.
It pays for the judge's use of it, and then they also.
Oh, okay.
It's, yeah.
Separate. Okay, thanks.
Any other debate? J.P. Cochran?
Thank you, Judge. I move to pass this budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Cheryl. Next thing, we have Judge Martin for the Circuit Court Division 1. That's going to be pages 119 and 120. You're recognized, Judge.
Thank you. Well, I'll take option 2. Y'all can just start asking me questions.
Okay, he's open for questions. Anyone got a question for him? Yes, this is J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Okay. Let me ask about your food. Are you feeding hungry families, or what are you doing with your food money?
We're feeding jurors.
Jurors?
Yes, sometimes they like to have lunch. Or every day they like to have lunch.
Do they have to work through lunch?
Yes, ma'am. Well, what do you mean?
I would have thought you broke for lunch. You go straight from 8 to 5?
No, I keep my jurors in the courthouse so that they're there at 1 o'clock, or if we take an hour break for lunch from noon to 1.
So you don't let them leave the building?
Right. So actually, I wouldn't say I don't let them leave the building, but I try to not let them leave the building. And some people are still smokers, and so they will leave the building. But
they don't have an option to go down to Dixon Street and get a pizza.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm surprised how many juries do you have?
Well, this year I've only had one jury trial.
Well, I'm looking under jurors and witnesses, 3092. There's 0 for actual expenditures for 15, and I had a question about that. So,
now tell me what you're looking at again.
It's jurors and witnesses, 3092. You're showing actual expenditures of 0.
Oh,
for half the year, I guess. Last year was
Yeah,
a
I
bit
don't-
different.
yeah, I'm not sure why it says that. My TCA, Joni, pulled this up today, and actually, I'm not sure what date this was printed out.
The actuals for 2015 is for the first 6 months.
Okay.
And so the one she gave you today is what's for the year.
And so, on my copy, for the one jury trial that we had, and I'm sorry, we're looking at food?
No, I was jurors and witnesses expense.
It's
We're at zero.
$2,757.96.
$2,700. So the food item is for that one trial that was a jury trial then.
The jurors and witnesses is their jurors' fees.
I don't think,
I'm
I don't
sorry,
believe-
I'm combining the food item with the payments to jurors and witnesses, so I think I may be confusing you. The food is because you don't let jurors leave the building for lunch,
that's right.
and you had one jury trial and spent about $2,700 in witnesses and jury fees, according
And that's
to
right.
your paperwork that's not in my book.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Another thing I noticed when I went through all these budgets is every judge, just about except Zimmerman, except juvenile and drug, are spending $790 on dues and memberships. But the amount requested varies so much. Some of the judges are requesting $1,000. You're only requesting $950. You only had an appropriation for $750 this year, but spent $790. So I guess you had to shuffle some money there. Not a lot of money, but it seemed to me that the request ought to be the same if everybody's dues and memberships are the same.
Well, yeah, the only thing I can think of is, like in the Arkansas bar, for example, if you want to join additional sections, I don't know if that's the reason, but, you know, those are like $20 or $40 each, and
Well, all the judges in Washington County or in this circuit spent $790, with the exception of the juvenile judge and the drug court judge.
well, that
So
might
that
be
seems like
a
everybody's
good number to
doing
ask
the same
for.
thing. Yeah, I guess that's my point.
I think that's probably a good point.
Okay.
And you said I asked for 900 or 950?
950.
I'm not. I don't know why we don't ask for a round number. You know, I guess they increase periodically, but we may have to ask the judge that's been doing this a little bit longer than me.
Well, you're all on the same page with this 790 apparently. Okay, Judge, that's all I have. Thank you.
JP Medicine.
Since I've discovered the automation fund with $200,000 in it, is there any reason your cell phone line item can come out of that?
Any reason it could?
It could not come out of that. I'm just looking for non-general fund revenue sources. Maybe Ms. Bollinger's the better one to answer that question, but if there's a way to shift some of these, because you're not spending $200,000.
Well, we are spending a big chunk of that, I believe, with context. Is that right?
That's what I heard. I don't.
I know we
I'm
had a
not
big
sure.
expenditure in last year's budget from the automation fund for context, some of the upgrades that were required.
Well, and I don't think that that's, when we talk about the 200,000 number, I don't think that we're accounting for, like, I want to say 48,000. Does anybody know? Or 70. It's going to be big.
And we're paying for part of Madison.
Part of Madison County.
Yeah. So I think that's, I mean, that's still a bunch of money, but it's not
Well,
200,000.
I guess my point is if you all think there is extra money in that fund, it'd be helpful to the county's general fund if some of these little expenses that qualify for coverage there could. Because like our circuit clerk will push costs to his automation funds if at all possible, and that would just be great. Because based on what Judge Zimmerman said, we've got iPads and cell phones being covered already by that, so it'd be good. And this is really, I think, not all the judges have this line item, but several do. If there was a way to shift some of those costs to that fund, I realize context is going to be expensive, and we'll take a chunk out of that. But given that our general fund is hurting a little bit, if there's any way to shift some of those, and I think you all know better the parameters of what that automation fund can be used for, but any little bit helps. So I have nothing further. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Harbison.
I move we pass this budget.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Judge Martin.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Next thing we have Circuit Court Division 2, Judge Threet. That's going to pay page 121 and 122. You're recognized.
Thank you. My budget, I guess, is going to be approximately 12% less than last year, and that's my opening statement.
Any questions? Judge Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. I see you reduced your small equipment line by quite a bit. You got your PCs purchased this year, all that you were planning on doing?
Yep, for now, the equipment, small equipment was for backup sound for the courtroom, so we don't have to have that again. So
Right.
that's why it went way down.
Looks like it didn't come as expensive as you planned, so that's helpful for this year. And but you more than doubled on your food, so.
Yeah, what we did, and it's a guessing game, is we tried to figure out the number of days scheduled that we think will be jury trials.
Okay.
For the next year, which is impossible to do. I had one Thursday and Friday that we thought up until I think it was late this afternoon was going to be 2 days of jury trial, and then they settled it. Actually, after we had done this budget, we think it's going to be, right now, think it's going to be 28 days. But we put in for 18, and those are one of those things that you try to estimate by looking at the calendar, looking at the cases, seeing whether they've been in mediation, seeing whether you feel this is going to be a trial or not, and then you try, because that's as close as we can get to being right on the money, is try to figure out these days are probably most likely going to be jury trial days, these will not.
Right. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Madison, did you have? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Judge. So do you also forbid jurors from leaving the courthouse?
I don't think we prevent them. I mean, if they need to go somewhere, they can. I don't have my bailiff standing there and telling them you'll not be going outside. But what we try to do to make it more efficient is if you add that time for people to try to leave the courthouse and go find a parking place somewhere and then go in and order the food and then come back out. We're talking sometimes an hour and a half break or something. We can do it. Sometimes we've done once we've done 30 minutes or 45-minute break for lunch, and that way they go from the jury room, the food's already there, they eat the food, and we come back out and we get going again. And usually that's better for the citizens too. They want that as well. They don't want to be in the courtroom any more than anyone else does. So it just makes it a lot more efficient in running the court. Now, there have been a day, although I've only had, I think, 4 days of jury trial, 3 called juries this year, and I guess next month we've got 5 days scheduled that I think will go on for 5 days. It's just something we do to try to be more efficient and accommodate the jurors, the citizens.
So it's an incentive to stay put rather than wandering.
Yes, and they usually will stay put, especially if I tell them we're going to give you, an hour or less for lunch. That's just not going to work, going down to get in their car. And otherwise, you just keep expanding the lunch hour for them to try to go out and then come back. And that way, you also don't have to wait. There have been a lot of jury trials when I was in Judge Story's that you would have to wait well over the time because 1 or 2 jurors didn't make it back. And so everyone, all the witnesses, all the police, everybody's sitting there waiting because 1 or 2 jurors still haven't made it back because they took way too long.
Okay, then the actual expenditures for half the year are less than $300. So
the 3 days that we have, if I'm not mistaken now, we had an update because that's through June 30th is $3,200, I believe, from what I got handed on the update. Is that correct? I just thought you ran off.
It went to $3,000, over $3,000 with the extra trial.
Yeah, Well, this figure here is for the 3 days that we had on the jury, right?
That's not food. That's for the actual juror.
Oh, that's the juror fees.
Yeah, food is right up here.
Oh, food's separate.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. All right,
But I
650.
wanted to point out, when the jury's deliberating, they stay.
Yeah.
And so we feed them.
Yeah, that's always a meal.
Okay.
That's by law. Or two.
But they'll wander off on you if you let them.
Well, we wouldn't want to wander too far down Dixon Street someday.
No, it depends on where they go to Dixon Street.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
J.P. Harbison.
Well, you gave a percentage of what your budget is down. I got $5,160 that it's down. I'm going to move that we pass this budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. J.P. Ecky, do you still want to be, okay? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge. Circuit Court, Division 4, Judge Beaumont.
What page?
That's going to be page 125 and 126. You're recognized.
And Casey is not here tonight because she's more than 9 months pregnant, and I'm afraid she's going to have her baby any second. So I didn't know how prepared y'all were to deliver a baby, so I told her she didn't have to come. So I apologize for my ignorance in any area. As y'all are aware, we do drug court, veterans treatment court, and then I also handle family and civil law. We have not asked for any additional money. We are continuing every year, as y'all are aware, to look into grants to try to limit the money that we're taking from the county. And for those of you who are new, who are not aware, our budget is supplemented. Say, for example, drug testing, we actually charge the participants, and that goes back into the general fund, so it doesn't actually end up being as big of an expense. Y'all are actually reimbursed for it. And the same goes for the staff attorney position, which the judges, I think 5 out of 7 of the judges now are using the staff attorney for legal research. Also, just as far as kind of a personal note on drug court and veterans treatment court, I've been doing this now almost 3 years, and I wanted to see exactly how we're doing. And I know it is still very early in my tenure, and I hope that my tenure continues so that we can continue to do this. But I wanted to let y'all know that we are looking at our numbers. We now have over 300 participants in the program, and we have it divided into our Track 1, Veterans Treatment Court, and Track 2. And Track 1 is our high-risk, high-need. These are the individuals that have the greatest chance of recidivating and ending up in jail and prison. And as of, I got the jail to run criminal histories on the 103 graduates that we had for the first 2 years and 5-6 months that I was there. And our recidivism rate is less than 10%, which for high risk, high need is, we're very, very happy. And I understand that that's, as they're out longer, that probably will go up some. But those are very, very proud of what our drug court and veterans treatment court team are doing. So I think they're making a huge difference, and I wanted y'all to be aware of how y'all are helping that and being a part of that.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Jackie
Probably
Pine?
not, but I'll do it anyway.
The first one is it a boy or a girl?
It is a girl.
Okay.
So
Well,
she's going into a whole new realm.
I wanted to tell you, I appreciate the what y'all do and the success that your court has had, but also very much that you have one for the veterans now. That's incredible and much needed. Thank you.
J.B. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. The last time you were here, and I can't remember why, the grant. It's like you were here not long ago. You mentioned the state is working on some increased funding for drug courts, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. I know it probably won't affect this fiscal year, or this budget, but I'm curious about that, just because they did sort of turn off the faucet for a while, and we picked up the slack, but I'm curious what might be coming.
The governor has allocated $2.8 million for specialty courts. That is, initially it was supposed to be divided up that every county was going to get, or every circuit was going to get $100,000. So they changed that now and have made it into what they're calling an accountability grant. And I think that's been mentioned to y'all that we're going to be applying for this accountability grant. The deadline for us to apply is December 1st. It's divided up right now that we are entitled to what they call base funding for our drug court based on the number of participants of $203,000. And then for Veterans Court, $10,000, because Vets Court, most of the services are covered by the VA, so we don't have to worry about those costs. There is additional funds of the $2.8 million that people have not said that they're going to apply for. It's a little less than $300,000. So people can apply for more. This money has been set aside for 2016. The different task force and committees and all of them that are looking at this, they are putting in avenues so that they can, number one, make sure that the specialty court is using best practices, because best practices are the ones that show the results that decrease recidivism, which that's all the training that we have, and that's why we've been able to get our stamps of fund, is because we've incorporated best practices. That's the first thing that basic thing that they're requiring to make sure that you get funding. What their plan is, and I can't speculate what the governor and the legislature is going to do, but their hope is that if our numbers continue to be good and to show that we are making a significant difference, then they will continue to fund these programs. But each year it's, I think, going to be evaluated, and we'll look at it again.
Do you know, will the money, and maybe you don't know this yet, but if there's any indication of whether the money will come with restrictions, or could it be used to offset some of the things that we've been funding, or is it only going to be limited to certain things?
It cannot, according to the meeting I just went to, it cannot be used to supplement something that's already being paid for by something else. It can be used for new services and those type things, but it can't, what they call supplant, that it's not allowed to do that, is what I was told the other day by Carrie Powers. And that's a whole new experience. But they want it to do, I think, new things and that kind of stuff. And it may be different next year. This is just for this grant period and what we're requesting.
That's kind of counterintuitive, since we were sort of filling the gap. We could take it away real quick and just kidding.
I understand.
That's kind of, I mean, just from our perspective, where we sort of felt like we were filling a gap, it's frustrating that the state comes in and sees that as ongoing funding that can't be replaced.
And that's what they are telling, Carrie Powers told me, as far as this grant process. Okay. Now, like I said, the staff attorney position, Pulaski County just pays for that out of their county, but ours is supplemented by our court fees. I'm looking at right now of increasing the court fees so that there is even more revenue coming in to that to the general fund to help offset more expenses for that position. But that's different avenues, because that money is set aside for drug courts, and it has to go for drug courts, those court fees.
Okay. I'd move to pass this budget.
I have a motion and a second. J.P. Bowman, do you need to be recognized? Please proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Beaumont, how much participation in this program has it increased over the past year?
I think it's been about a year since I came before y'all again, and we were at 220 something at that point. Now we're over 300, so we've increased by about 80 participants.
Wow, unbelievable.
I'm tired.
Really great job. Thank you. Thanks, Judge.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Tell me what you spend your food money on.
Ours mainly goes for jurors. And I wanted to mention, because also as far as juries, once a jury is brought in and they're hearing testimony, you really want as little outside influence as possible. If they're leaving to go to lunch, that risks them running into witnesses, risks them seeing newspapers, getting outside influences. And so we try to keep the outside influences is down as much as possible so that there is no, I don't want to say corruption, but, outside influences affecting the jury. So that's one of the reasons that we do try to keep the jurors inside and try to keep them reined in so that they can't have contact with the plaintiffs and defendants and the different witnesses in the trial.
And you also view it as an incentive for them to stay at the courthouse?
Yes, ma'am.
You
Yes,
have
ma'am.
an hour lunch?
Yes, ma'am, usually.
Okay.
I mean, if we're in session and we're trying to finish something up and quicker, then we might go shorter than that, but typically it's about an hour.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Ecke?
Thank you, Madam Judge. Judge Beaumont, how many times a week or a month do you meet for drug court? I mean, how often do you convene?
We have drug court all day, every Monday, and we're expanding it now because the number of participants, we're
So currently you're meeting once a week?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
then we're going
And
to
then veterans?
we're going to start doing that on Thursday mornings.
Okay, so right now you're not doing it, you're just...
On Mondays. We do
It's
it
all on
once a
Mondays?
month on Mondays.
Once a month?
Yes, ma'am. But we're
And
seeing,
drug court is once a week, correct?
yes, ma'am.
And then family?
I hear family cases just all the time,
Okay.
just spread out.
Okay. Let me ask you on your law clerk. That's a new position that was for this year, right? You got approved last year for it?
No, we've had the position's been there since Judge Gunn got it, don't quote me on this, but maybe 2009.
But the current person...
She's only been there, yes, ma'am.
This year, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just sitting out in the public arena last year when you were talking about trying to get this person there.
Yes, ma'am.
And the controversy that it was. They were here, they were there, they were this, they were that. But her salary's ungraded. Is it just because it is, or is it usually graded something?
I think most attorney positions are usually ungraded.
So she's an attorney?
Yes, ma'am. She's a staff attorney.
A staff attorney?
Yes,
But she's
ma'am.
not an attorney herself?
She is.
She is?
Yes, she's been an attorney since, don't quote me on this because it's been too long.
So does the
Many, many
position,
years.
does the position require that you are an attorney in order to be that, or is it just?
Yes, ma'am. It's always required that they be an attorney.
One more thing, and I hope we can put this issue of food to rest. If I was serving on a jury, I would sure hope a judge like you would provide me lunch, and I didn't have to go out and spend my money because I'm already missing time from work. And I would feel that these are my tax dollars that work for me while I'm serving my county or whatever. So I'm so glad you all are providing food for your jurors, because I would expect it if I was sitting as a juror. So anyway, but thank you for clarifying this. That's all. Thank you.
Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. In this legal service you're talking about, Ms. Darling?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, guys, I don't, JP's, excuse me, Eva. I don't know if you remember, but Ms. Darling has some very unique credentials that comes along with her experience that I think contributed to an increase in her salary, and there's a lot of discussion about it. But I think Judge Beaumont could give us a report on that, about what a phenomenal job she's been doing for these participants. Do you have any comments for us about what she's been doing there above and beyond?
Yes, like I said, number one, she's been being used by the other judges, which I think has been, they can speak for that, but I think it's been very helpful to them to have her around, to have someone that they can trust. You want someone giving information to a judge who's a good attorney. You do. But as far as drug court and veterans treatment court, she went down to Texarkana, maybe a couple weeks ago, because we're constantly looking for transitional living places for our individuals in our program. Because if they're living in a drug environment, they're going to continue to do drugs. You've got to get them out of that environment. And so there are no real transitional living places in Fayetteville. And so we have to go outside this area. There's a few in Benton County, but the waiting list you can't get in until 6 months down the road, which doesn't do our individuals any good. So she went to Texarkana and found an establishment by a lady named Miss Brown, who is doing great work over there, and got two of our ladies in there, which that's a place that we had absolutely no idea existed. And both those ladies are doing very well. She helped locate a place in Jay, Oklahoma. It's called CARE, where we have 3 of our young men. And these are young men that I'm saying that could not stop using. Couldn't. And this was finally the last thing. And it's a place where all they can do is they do groups, they do drug, alcohol, education, counseling, and then they go to church, and then they go to work. That's all they do. And I can tell you, I've seen these gentlemen now, and 2 of them have been in there one of them's been in, he's going to finish it up in about 2 months. So he's been about there 10 months. The other 2 have been in there about 6 or 8 months. And just the difference in these gentlemen's lives. They come to court and they are the most thankful, happy. They get to see their families now. They have a future. They're going to continue after this program is done. They're going to stay there. They get to keep their jobs that they have there. And they get to have a life. And that is because of Miss Darling and because she is able to find these random different places to help different people. And so I don't know what I would do without her, and I hope I never have to.
Yeah. Well, I knew that she had some unique skills there that you didn't have in your group. That was been a great contribution. I'm glad you found her. Thank you so much.
And we have a motion and we have a second. And we are supposed to have been discussing circuit court Division 4, but I think we've also branched over into the adult drug court transfers. And we can vote. Let's go ahead and do the first one. So you got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Now let's go to the next one. Adult drug court transfers out, and that's page 203. But I think some of you have been on that topic already. J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. This budget has its own revenue source. It's on page 63 of your hymnal. $21,950 is the anticipated revenue, and that is the budget, and I move to pass 3028.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Y'all have a nice evening.
Circuit Court Division 5, Judge Bryant. I'm sorry, 127.
Hello, Judge. Good evening.
Hi.
And my request is about $2,000 less than last year. And same as the judges before me, our jury trials are so unpredictable that we ask, obviously, typically for much more than we're spending. But it's because we set, 25 up to maybe even 40 a year, and then we end up trying just a handful. So it's really impossible to predict. And on the subject of food, I wanted to point out also, Judge Threet talked about efficiency. I think we pay jurors, and Cheryl can correct me, I think it's $50 a day if they get called to serve. So by feeding them lunch, a lot of times we can make maybe a 3-day trial, a 2-day trial, because we keep them there and not waste that time. And then that saves the county up to $600 a day that we would have had to pay those jurors if our trial spread out additional days. So that's another reason we do it.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone have a question for Judge Bryant? J.P. Cochran.
Move to pass 0405.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Next thing we have is Circuit Court Division 6, Judge Lindsay.
Has anyone else been
Pull up a chair.
500% over on their food budget besides me?
You got
Wasn't it you, Jackie, that said we'd laid food to rest? I think it was you that said that.
You're recognized.
Any questions?
That's okay.
Dinner
We
at
can
your
go from
house,
there.
then?
Do we have a good question for Judge Lindsay?
What page?
That page is
29, 129.
129, J.P. Cochran.
Well, Judge, I've only been before you 3 times. They've been on very special occasions for me.
Swearing you in. Let's make that clear.
Yes, sir. But out of all the pages that I did have this little note right here with this $10,000, so please, on the food.
Okay.
That's the only question I have on your budget.
You may remember this. Last year, or at the beginning of this year, my docket changed dramatically. In the past, I had been handling civil cases, criminal cases, but only 25% of the docket, domestic relations cases, and some probate cases. This year, I'm handling 75% of the criminal cases and 10% of the domestic relations docket, and then I still have a few leftover probate cases. But I've had 14 jury trials this year, and I have the possibility of 11 more before the year is out. Now, I'm sure all of those won't try, but for instance, last year, Judge Story, who had this same docket, had a total of 17 jury trials, and I feel sure I'll go past that. But that's why I'm over budget. I had asked for $10,000, and I was given 1,000?
1,000. Yes, sir.
That's why I'm over
and through 6 months, you'd already spent 2,800, and I'm not sure what you've gone up to here that way. But the proportion of the food to the juror fees is very much in line with the other judges.
And I won't repeat the same reasons, but I will say this. I believe that in a criminal case, it's even more important that you make sure that the jury is not tainted by any outside influence.
Yes, sir.
And all the other reasons that the judges gave would still apply to a criminal jury.
Well, I move to pass budget 0406.
So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? J.P. Harbison, did you want to be recognized? No. Okay. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign.
All right.
Thank you, Judge Lindsay.
Hope I get to swear some of y'all in again.
Me too. I have the Circuit Court Division 7, Judge Taylor. I don't think she could make it, but I think, Cheryl, can you present this for her?
Can I say?
That's going to pay page 131.
She could not be here. She had a prior commitment. She told me about it, but she said she was flat on her costs, slightly down, and said if we had questions, she would be happy to be here on Monday. I hoped that we wouldn't have to make her come back on or come on Monday.
Cheryl, do you know anything different than what J.P. Madison said?
No, and she's Judge Taylor's excellent at watching her budget and her expenditures, and she does a really great job on this. So,
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, J.P. Madison and Cheryl. Appreciate you. The next thing we have is our public defender, page 137, 138. You're recognized.
Good evening. I'm Denny Highslip. I'm the public defender. This is Leanna Houston. She's the chief deputy. If I can't answer any of your questions, I'm sure that she can.
137, 138. Are you open for questions?
Well, first of all, I would address the personal services.
Okay.
We're requesting 40,000 more. What we did several months back is that you approved a part-time position that we had and moved that into a full-time position. So that's the difference there. And we're requesting 25,000 for the part-time budget as opposed to 48.5. So that's the difference in that. Otherwise, we're asking for about a $20,000 increase. 8,700 of that is for computer equipment. Our computers are outdated, and I think they're almost out of warranty, if not out of warranty. So we need to update those. We didn't ask for anything last year in that line item.
Any questions for Mr. Heislop? Okay, J.P. Madison?
I'm going to beat this dead horse to death, I guess. You're not feeding jurors. Who are you buying food for?
It's a small amount of stuff for to have water and coffee in the office for clients who walk to see us, or police officers who are in our building. I've done things in the last year to try to reduce the amount. Instead of using a service that brings it to us, we go ourselves and get it at Sam's, and some things like that to try to reduce the cost. And I think it's cut it significantly, but it's for people who have come in to see us. We don't use styrofoam cups anymore. Everybody's brought their old coffee mugs from home, and we spend the end of the day where we wash our dishes. So we're trying to do some things like that to cut the cost of it.
Okay, the sheriff told us last night that they're refilling bottles with tap water. So you might consider that. But $300 is not much. Thank you.
Well, we do have a water filter system now, so that we don't we're not using I can't remember the name of the service, Cessna, or the ones who brought the water in. We don't use that anymore at all, and we've done things like that as well.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Culligan, I'm sorry.
J.P. Harbison?
On your budget, it's just a few $100s, but there's several items. Your telephone fax line went down from $1,500 to $50. That's good. Other professional services was up $500. Cell phones is up $200. Internet connection is up $900.
Some of that's because, let me take it in groups, or one at a time. Professional services is for when we have to get a transcript for part of our trials or something like that, and that's constitutional, it's required. And as Judge Lindsay said, we are having more trials since August. Our caseload has gone up 100 a week. And so with all of that, we've got more expenses that we are required to follow through on the professional services.
Cell phones.
The cell phones. I'll say this, our attorneys all have their own private cell phones that they use for their personal needs, but some of it is, we have now the case software management, and that's, a lot of it's done on our cell phones or iPads, and so it's so that they can use that or access that when they are outside of the office, whether they're down at the jail or at arraignments or in court.
Okay, that was $900, the cell phones. I mean, that's, you went up $900. I would have thought that would have been flat.
I think it's trying to adjust more for what the expenditures actually were for the year.
Basically, we're having iPhones instead of old-fashioned flip-top phones, I guess. Okay.
Walkie-talkies.
Yeah. Oh, I like the can with a string. What do you mean? Travel, you're up $500 on travel?
Yes. And I'll say this, our attorneys do not charge the county when they go to the jail or when they make local trips. And we make several trips a day to the jail and back and forth to our office and all. And our attorneys take that cost on their own. These are expenses for when we're having to go to other counties or when we're having to go see clients at the jail in Benton County. And it's for or trips to Little Rock or the crime lab or whatever. And so it's only for big expenses or bigger trips where we charge the county.
Common carrier, I assume, airplane, air travel, up 500 on it.
For continuing education. In the last couple of years, because of the increasing caseload, because of our attorneys being so busy, because of the increase in murders, I'm trying to get more attorneys certified to do death penalty cases. And so we've fallen behind on our CLE, and we don't have a carryover anymore on our CLE, and everybody's going to be needing to go to their continuing ed, and that's required.
Up $1,000 on mileage?
Yes. In order to go to courts or to go to Madison County or to, go where we're needing to go.
All right, we're up 200 on lease machinery and equipment. I guess those are copier machines.
Right, and right now we're working to renegotiate our copy machine lease. It's up in February, and so we're working to renegotiate that. But those expenses are going up, and our copying is more, because when we copy the discovery that we get from the prosecutor or whatever on our death penalty cases, we have to make a copy for the whole team, and all of that is required under the law for us to make copies of.
We're up $3,800 on dues and membership.
And some of that that also includes our research contract with Lexus, and their cost is going up.
Meals and lodging, $500.
That's part of our travel to continuing education.
Well, I'd like to have seen those flat. Practically all our other departments kept things really flat, maybe one or two items. But I was really surprised to see so many line items go up $100, $200, $300.
Last year we worked hard to work with y'all and to cut it, and we cut our budget by about $13,000. And we have found this year it has been very hard to make the ends meet and to do an increase in caseload, to take all these extra clients that we're assigned to take, and we have to do their cases and we have to do a good job on them. And once we take them, we have to do things right that's required for us. And it's been hard, and we've had a hard time making our general supplies and buying the stuff we're needing to do.
I have no other questions.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to back up to personal services on that. Since we did move one of your employees from a part-time position to a full-time position to allow them to accomplish the work that you needed them to do in a work week and keep on top of the cases, I was kind of surprised to see a part-time salary in there. Can you explain why?
That's for our law clerks.
Right.
And that's always been in there, and part of it, it's for our law clerks who do between 10 and 15 hours a week, and they're paid $10 an hour like the prosecutors do.
Right.
And mainly they go and they're at the prosecutor's office copying discovery. And so it helps both offices.
I understand what you're using them for, because we were talking about that in depth when you brought that part-time to a full-time. I'm just surprised, I guess I'm caught off guard that it's really, we upgraded a part-time to a full-time, and now we're bringing back a part-time, is what I see.
Okay, I guess I'm confused. We're not
Okay.
bringing back a part-time.
Well, we had a part-time employee that really couldn't make the rounds that you needed to make, and we upgraded that to a full-time position. Okay, so that would have taken away the part-time need.
Not all of it.
Not
We
all of
already
it?
had the three. We already
Okay,
had the law
okay.
clerks in there.
Thank you.
And that was already there, and it was already.
That refreshes my memory.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
J.P. Lloyd.
Thank you, Judge. On your general supplies, you've gone up $3,500. What are some things that come out of your, what do you spend general supplies?
A lot of it is the printer ink. for the printers. That's been very expensive. A lot of it's the paper. When we have these death penalty cases, our files are huge, and we are required to make copies for the different teams. We have to have 2 attorneys on each of those cases. They have to be death penalty certified. We have to have a mitigation person and an investigator, and each person has to have their own copy of the file. And so things like that are causing the increased cost. And so we adjusted it to meet what it's showing from this year.
Okay. And back to something that J.B. Harbison had spoken about. The difference between the travel and the mileage is what? Because, I mean, I know it's gone up $1,500, but, I mean, how do you differentiate between travel and then mileage? I mean, I know it's 2 separate line items.
That definition is in the front of your blue book with the definitions, but the travel is anything outside of mileage or airplane tickets. It would be like for your luggage or insurance for an airplane ticket.
So you leave the area?
Travel, no, it's just travel. Let me just read it to you, it'll be easier probably. What number is that? Travel is like for in-flight insurance, baggage fees, parking fees, extra charges not specified for fuel for vehicle rental, toll fees. So it's not like for an airplane ticket, it's not your fuel like your mileage reimbursement. Okay. It's just unique things that you would do if you were traveling.
Okay. So the general supplies, we're feeling like it's going to be more than $3,500. I mean, we're feeling like we need.
If you look at what she had printed off in June as to what we had already expensed, what our expenses were, as of the end of June, we had already pretty much spent what we had. And it has been, we've had a hard time making our budget this year with all the cuts we did last year.
Okay, thank you.
J.B. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. I move that we pass this budget, and I would like to editorialize by saying that I think your people should be reimbursed for their mileage.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yours? Any other discussion?
Thank you, J.P. Madison, because that was what I was going to say as well.
All in favor of this budget, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Next thing we have is our prosecuting attorney. That's going to be page 135 and 136.
Maybe it's to keep track of
it. 135.
You're recognized.
Matt Durrett, I'm the prosecuting attorney, and there are a couple of changes on here. I hope y'all got a revised budget. There was an error, and there was some sort of snafu from when we submitted our budget and what got submitted to you all, and it was wishful thinking on my part to think that our budget was only going up $42, and I thought that there was something too good to be true, and there was, and it was that there was left out a big portion of the $7,000 that I requested for additional part-time salaries. There are 3 major areas in which I'm requesting increases. One is the part-time salary for, or the salaries for part-time. I'm requesting an additional $7,000 in that. That goes to our law clerks. We have 5 law clerks, and right now we pay them $10 an hour, and I would like to see them get a raise to $12 an hour. They have been at $10 an hour since 2006. And we did some asking around because we have had a problem with retaining good law clerks. Most recently, we're having one leave tomorrow who's getting a better paying job. So I'd like to be able to. I know I can't compete with a lot of private firms. I understand that, but I would like it to make it a little bit better, a little bit easier for them. But I did some checking, and the ranges from what I initially thought was 14 an hour to $20 an hour. There are some that pay around $12 an hour, and I'm sure there's some that pay, I know the public defender pays 10, and I'm sure that there may be some that pay 10 or even less than that, but I would like to remain competitive in the area of paying our law clerks, because they do a lot for us. There's a lot that our law clerks do, so it's helpful when we have good law clerks like we have now, and I'd like to be able to keep them. Two other areas in which, and there's some areas in which I've just kind of shifted some things around, but one is training, where I've requested an additional $2,000. Our trainings are, we have 15 attorneys. I have 15 deputies on staff. That doesn't include me, so there's 16 lawyers. And they have to have continuing education. And so what we do is we typically, unless we can find some sort of seminar that's paid for, either by some federal grant or something, we always go to a prosecutor coordinator's office. They have our biannual seminars where we get our continuing education hours, and that's about $125 per person. So at $3,000, that doesn't cover everybody in our office for both seminars. But we also have training for our support staff that the prosecutor coordinator's office puts on, and we also are required to get training for our ACIC. Anyone that's licensed to run the criminal histories, we have to get yearly training on that. And the other one that I'm really requesting more money on is mileage. Because mileage is up, and kind of like the public defender's office, I've instructed at least my deputies not to submit mileage for when they go to, say, down to the sheriff's office or go down to do arraignments or to the Fayetteville Police Department or the Springdale PD, because we've got roughly 35 employees, and we have a lot of employees going back and forth to JDC and other places, and I want to make sure that that's where we can spend our mileage money. And we go to Madison County, we go to Little Rock, we go to different places like that. So I'm requesting a little bit more there. So that having been said, I'll open it up to questions.
J.P. Dennis.
I'd raise my hand and then you answered the question, but it also prompted another question. So the law clerks are making 10 to 12, or you're asking for 12, but you said that the private firms are paying up to 14. So why are you just asking for 12 and not 14?
Well, I'd like to pay them, a lot more, but I understand that there are budget constraints, and that that by raising $2 an hour based on the amount of hours they work, which I think is about 15 hours a week, that's $7,000 there. So it's a lot of money, and I understand that, and that's why I don't want to come in with a huge raise, and so with a huge request, because I understand that there are issues with. We're short of money.
I'm shocked that it's that little. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well,
I was advocating for the 14.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and I would take it if I could get it. I'm not trying to argue against it, but I'm just trying to recognize the fact that we do have budget issues, and that that's just kind of what I was hoping for. I'll take whatever you give me. So if you want to give me more, I won't object to that.
Well, then I'll move that we've passed your budget as presented with an amendment to pay them 14.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Well, we averaged it out, and we submitted it at $7,000, a $7,000 increase, because that would. And Amanda can answer that better than I can, because she figured it up to.
Working at like 14 hours a week for $2 more an hour, I think is how we ended up with 7,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
and so.
J.P. Dennis,
that's.
Okay, J.P. Madison, you're recognized.
So what I was going to say was that at $10 an hour, you're probably not losing them to the private jobs. You're probably losing them to for them to go mow yards because they would make more.
Well,
I mean, but here's my concern. I see all the public defenders folks still here.
Mhm.
I think any raise that we give you all, they're going to come back and ask us for. So we need to think about this. I'm not saying that everybody's not entitled to a raise. I think
Right.
absolutely, because you probably could make more money mowing yards
Mhm.
or doing yard work at my mom's rental houses. But I think that we need to think about the impact it has on the public defenders, because I saw all y'all whispering and knew that that's exactly what you were saying. So before I can support the additional $7 to take it to a $4 increase,
Mhm.
I'd like to know what the impact it would be on the public defender's budget. The other question I have, and I guess I'm glad the public defenders folks are still in the room, because I think your folks absolutely should be paid for their mileage around town. We have a lot of county cars. And
Well,
I think
and-
we need to figure out a way for your folks to be able to take county vehicles.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I didn't want the thunderous applause by saying that we don't use any county vehicles, because I knew that would be coming with.
No, they're pool
all the-
vehicles. We're not giving
all
them
the
to them.
applause. I mean, that's just we've never asked for a county vehicle because
And I'm just saying,
Yeah, sure.
I think that we have county vehicles that sit parked, and I'd like for us to figure out a way for your folks and the public defenders folks to use those for simple trips around town, because my understanding is that's what pooled vehicles are for. So you're trying to do a good thing by saving money in a budget by saying to your employees, bear your own expenses, which I don't think is fair, especially if there's a vehicle parked out there with a tank of gas that they could take down there. So I'm not asking you to ask for a car, but I
Right.
just think there should be a way to use the number of county vehicles we have at our disposal for the use of county employees. Because if we're going to be reimbursing your mileage, which I think we should, then I say use one of our cars instead. So, but I'll support the $4 increase if we can figure out the impact, because I know y'all are going to come right back and ask for it. So we just need to understand that impact. Thank you, Judge. And
Okay, J.B. Harbison.
We've got a lot of county employees that want to raise, and I don't know exactly, I have an idea where some of the money may be coming from, but I think, and I realize that J.P. Dennis is being very generous, but I cannot vote for it for the 14. I will vote for it for the 12. It's, we've got a tight budget, and, you know, if we had the money, yes. And it's kind of like building a house. Well, someone comes in, well, why don't I do this? Oh, well, I'll just go on and do that. That's not going to cost that much. And next thing, someone else comes in, and before you know it, you have your house is increased, almost doubled in price because of all the changes that you've made or decided you wanted to make. I will support the 12, but not the 14. Thank you.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Judge. I first of all want to commend you because I see a lot of proactive due diligence here, and that's very much appreciated, at least from this chair on the court for sure. I'm a little conflicted on I appreciate your reserve in coming and asking for 12 and using that $2 increase, and I am 100% for that, no questions that. And I'm not really opposed to the market value of the 14. My concern is how far will that $4 raise go across the county? So I just want to make sure we have a really good understanding of if we treat everybody fairly. You only ask for 2. If we decide to be magnanimous and change it to 4, how many other departments and how many other employees? And I'm not real sure I understand how many thousands of dollars. For your budget, it's only $7,000 more. That's probably not the end of the world. Right. For all the other budgets that have $10 an hour help in the law clerk area or even something similar, that's my one reservation is how far is this ripple going to extend into the county pond, and what's it really going to cost us as opposed to the $7,000. But I really commend you for the rest of this, and I'm very much on board for the $12 an hour raise, no problem at all. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Lundstrom.
You know, I know they haven't had a raise since 2006. I wished you'd asked for raises back in 2007 because apparently they don't get picked up in the annual raises we've been giving the other employees. But what you're asking for on the $12 issue is a 20% increase. A $4 increase is a 40% increase. I mean, those are huge raises in a percentage, but there are people working here that I've been fighting to get more money for several years that are in the 10% bracket, and it can't be done because of our little scale we pay people on. So now I'm being asked to take some other people and give them a $4 an hour raise when I couldn't get a 50-cent an hour raise for these other $10 an hour people. Considering the 2006 issue, I'm like J.P. Maxwell. I would support the $2 raise, although it really goes against my conservative values. But I can't support the $4 raise either. But thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
I'm going to recognize Attorney Zaga.
Thank you, Judge. I would just make a suggestion. Justice Dennis's motion was to pass Mr. Durrett's budget with a $4 raise. I would gently suggest probably the better way, or for a $4 raise for his law clerks. I would gently suggest that you break that into simply an amendment as opposed to saying I want to pass the budget plus the $4 an hour raise because you could be seen as failing the budget. I know all this is preliminary, but for making it right parliamentary-wise, I'd suggest making those into two issues if that's all right with you.
Glad to do so.
J.P. Ecke.
So does that do it?
Well, the second has to agree. Were you the second, Rick? I'm sorry, Justice Cochran. Thank you.
But so there's a main motion and an amendment. Is that what we effectively did?
I was trying to separate it.
Okay.
Separate the amendment from
I
Matt's
just want to make sure everybody understood that there's now two motions on the floor. Okay. Or a motion and amendment.
Yes, exactly. The amendment would The amendment is would precede the main motion, which would be to, well, I assume, I don't know, would be to pass Mr. Durrett's budget as presented by him. So the amendment now is to grant a $4 an hour raise to his law clerks.
Okay. J.P. Ecke, you still have discussion.
I agree with J.P. Maxwell. I will support the $12. I'd like us to visit later an increase and the use of the county vehicles and or mileage. But for right now, I support the budget, not the amendment. And I think we need to just revisit this at another time and see how much money there is. But county vehicles, I believe that is a good idea. I believe mileage, I think that's a good idea. So perhaps we can discuss that and bring it to our attention later.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Thank you.
Now we're ready to vote on the amendment to raise it from $12 to $14. Is this correct?
On roll call.
I'm going to call the roll on this. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joe Maxwell?
No.
Gary McHenry?
No.
Joe Patterson? Butch Pond?
No.
Bill Ussery? Daniel Balls?
No.
Harvey Bowman?
No.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
Yes.
Lisa Ecke?
No.
Ann Harbison?
No.
Sharon Lloyd?
No.
Tom Lundstrom?
No.
Eva Madison?
No.
Okay, so the $14, but we'll go back now and
To what I asked for.
And vote on what you
Okay.
asked for, so.
Ask for Christmas, you get Thanksgiving.
Sure.
Okay. J.P. Dennis, did you need to be
Yes, so
working?
now I move then that we accept, no?
It's already on the floor.
On the floor,
We have a
okay.
motion and a second. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joe Maxwell?
Yes.
Gary McHenry?
Yes.
Joe Patterson? Butch Pond?
Yes.
Bill Ussery? Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
Yes.
Lisa Ecke?
Yes.
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Matt. The next thing we have is the district court budget. That's going to be page 133. I guess Ms. Bollinger's, 133. Cheryl?
The district courts, we pay for half of the salary for the district judge and for one court clerk. So they send us the information of what their budgets are being proposed at. These numbers could change slightly. They typically don't, but they could change slightly once their budgets are passed as well. So whatever their salaries are set up by the district courts, which we have no say in, we end up paying half of it for one judge and one clerk in each district.
J.B. Cochran?
Thank you, Judge. I move to pass 0409 through 0413.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. J.P. Maxwell?
Maybe for more from my education, but I noticed that there are several of these, Fayetteville, Springdale, and Elkins particularly, that what's been spent 2012, 2013, and then if you extrapolate the actual expenditures for 2015, that there's a big disparity or a big difference between what the consistent expenditures have been and what's being requested for 2016. There's probably a great explanation for that, but I'm not real sure what it is. Can you shed some light on that?
I've got a great explanation for that.
Perfect.
That was because one quarter had been paid. The second quarter would have been paid in July, and this just went through June. So you don't even have half of a year here. Right. You just have, because we just pay it quarterly.
Right. Well, I guess when I look back at the previous years, though, I'm putting more weight on the 12, 13, and 14. And looks like there's a fairly large increase in budgeted amounts from those years to 2015. And even with the quarterly, it doesn't look like there's, at least from my vantage point, it doesn't look like there's a big increase in spending so far, even at a quarterly, that this would be, these numbers for 2015 and 16 both are a little higher than what I would have anticipated for average expenditures. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. We just put in whatever they tell us the salaries they think the salaries are going to be. They present the actual salaries to us quarterly, and then we pay half of whatever that is. So, it's their numbers. I can't really explain why it would be more, but they're within the range of what is allowed by law. One court actually sent in one that was a little higher. The clerk was higher than what the statute that I read, and so I questioned that, and so we reduced it back to where it should have been and told them we'd give them half of that max. So.
Okay, thank you.
J.P. Madison.
This is one of those things that we don't have a choice in. The state legislature sets the salaries for these judges. That's why there's so much variation year to year. They just decide what to make the salary, and then they send us our bill. And just as an FYI, effective in next year's budget, these salaries should go away because all of these courts are converting to state-funded courts. So if all of that goes as planned, some of this should, at least a chunk of it, should disappear because all these judges are being converted to state employees.
In 2017?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So if it's all funded, that's the if the legislature sees fit to fund what they have actually arranged, then a large portion of these costs will go away. But for now, it's one of those things where they say, oh, this judge is going to make $100,000 and here's your bill for half. So the historical irregularities are just the way it is. So thank you.
I have a statement that I want to make here. Every time the states take something over, it comes out of our county turnback. That's just the way it is. I just want you to know that. They may pick it up, but we're going to pay for it in the long run. So that's where it comes from. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Okay, so now we're on the floor with a motion and a second. Is this okay? Is that right? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Cheryl. Any citizens' comments? Oh, yes, go ahead, J.P. Madison.
Before we move to citizen comments, I'm feeling very badly about giving the prosecuting attorneys $10 an hour people a raise to $12, and I would like to hear from the public defender if they have people working at $10 an hour. If that is the case, that is an embarrassment to this county. I truly have some people, nameless, who work for me doing grungy things at rental property that are illiterate with no training, that I do have to supervise fairly closely, that I pay $10 an hour. And these are educated people that probably don't require nearly as much supervision. And I think it's a tragedy if we are having educated, competent people that we pay $10 an hour in this county. Do you?
Yes,
Would you
we've
confirm?
both
The mic.
kept our salaries for our law clerks the same, and they've been that way. Ms. Talbert was one of our law clerks, and she said in 2004 she was being paid $10 an hour. So that hasn't increased for either office in years. And we have 3 law clerks. That's the $25,000 part-time salary that you were asking me about. If we increase that to $12 an hour, it would increase it by about $4,000 or $5,000 to $30,000.
So your budget would increase about $4,000.
Right.
I move to pay the law clerks in the public defender's office equivalent to the prosecuting attorneys at $12 an hour.
And I'll just say this, that it's going to be very hard if they're paying more for us to be able to keep all law clerks, because as soon as they'll have an opening, they'll be going over.
Great. J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Well, we have a motion that came in before. I was going to make a suggestion that we get all of the law clerks' salaries together to find out how many hours we have, and consider all of that at the next meeting through our budget process. But we have a motion, so that kind of
We have a
supersedes
motion
it.
on the floor,
Right.
and we have a second. And so to go ahead and give the 3 law clerks in the public defenders the same raise that we gave the prosecuting attorney. Is that your understanding?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, J.P. Lundstrom.
Well, I agree with J.P. Cochran. We could be opening a can of worms here. I don't know how many $10 an hour people we've got on different staffs and so forth that we're going to be ready to give a 20% raise to. Some of these people that have been getting it since 2004, I can certainly understand if they'd been getting their 2s, 3s, 5s, and so forth. The others were getting, they'd be ahead of where they are now, obviously. But I also would like to know how many people we have $10 an hour in these other departments that we have to do this same thing for. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. These positions are almost identical for the kind of work and the qualifications you're bringing to the job. And so they probably recruit from the same pool. I don't think you're going to find jobs like this anywhere else in the county. The other thing we need to keep in mind is that these are ungraded positions outside of the JSAP program that miss normal raises. That's why they've been missed. And every other increase we've given over the past, I know we haven't given them every year, but they've been missed in the years that we have given raises. The other thing is they don't even have a range. They don't even have that range to say that this person should come in at the bottom or the top. They get completely missed. And so there are going to be other positions in the county that may make close to this, but they're positions in the JSAP system that they're rated to belong in those categories, and they're rated to get that kind of pay. And then there's still, even within that system, a range for them to move around in and move up in. And so from my knowledge of the county, I can't see of any other positions that would be comparable to this, because they're so unique in that they're outside of JSAP. And I don't think we can pass tonight the raise for the prosecutor and then leave it undecided for the public defenders. We have to do the same for both. It's just, it's not even an option as far as I'm concerned. Might it have other people saying, I want a raise too? Yeah, they've probably been getting them. So if you're confident that $4,000 will cover it, you said 4 to 5, I think we need to do this, because it's hard enough having people sit here one night to make y'all come back another. I'd prefer to avoid that if we could. I just think we need to get this done. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Harbison.
We've got a budget to think about, and they didn't come in and ask, and I want to be fair also, but I think we need to vote on this later while we have time to think about it, and not do anything on the spur of the moment. I just feel that this is on the spur of the moment, and a yes are probably equal, but, I'm not going to vote tonight. I may vote later, but not tonight. Thank you.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Judge. See what you've done, Matt. I'm just kidding. I think that I very much agree with J.P. Cochran, J.P. Harbison on using some wisdom and seeing how far this expands, but I also see that we've already started, and I think I'm going to be in support of this because I see the equality here and the similarity in positions, and so I do think we need to take some time to see what other positions maybe have this same sort of perspective to them, and to make sure that we understand just how much money that we're committing to when we look at all those. But I think in these two cases, these are similar enough that I can easily be in support of this, especially since we're already partway down the road, not deciding whether or not we're even going to start down this. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
J.P. Pond.
Everything we've voted on and approved, we've approved tentatively. And the next time we meet, we're gonna have numbers on this, exact numbers. We're not really flying in the dark. We've got we've got all of our instruments over here that are gonna set us straight so we'll know where we're going. And I believe I'm just like the majority of y'all. I'm not going to leave public defenders by the wayside after we've given an increase to the prosecutors. I'm going to vote for this, and we'll probably, after we see what the numbers are and the final vote on the final budget comes down, we'll all know what the real numbers are. So yes, I am. This is not just some kind of knee-jerk reaction without looking at any numbers. We've got a rough figure of what it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and vote for it, but it's not that I'm not being careful about what I'm doing. Thank you.
Attorney Zaga has a comment he'd like to make to the court, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Judge, thank you. I appreciate. I think this is more for informational purposes than anything else. These folks are all at least second-year law students, unless the practice has changed dramatically since I was a second-year law student. And the only three offices I can think of in this county that would hire a law clerk would be the prosecutor, the public defender, and me. I don't have a law clerk unless our judges, unbeknownst to me, and this is an educated speculation, are hiring law clerks, and I don't believe they are. Those are the three offices that would employ a law student. So I think for my guess, and I know it's a guess, is that you've heard from everybody who has a law clerk tonight.
Okay, so now we are on the floor. We've already voted on the final budget, but now we've come back with J.P. Madison's motion that we go ahead and increase the public defender's law clerks by the same $2. Is that the understanding? Yes. J.P. Cochran?
Let's call the vote.
Thank you, Judge. On the budget that we passed, and this is a question for Cheryl, the budget that we passed, the $7,000, were the FICA, FUTA, SUTA, and other benefits included in that originally. So essentially, by what we passed with adding another $7,000, we did not include the FICA, FUTA, SUTA amount for that department's budget. So, did we? Because we just added $7,000 to the one line item.
You didn't increase the other $7,000. You stayed at the $12.
Excuse me. That's right. So that is there. So really, when we're adding the $2 an hour, we're also needing to add the accompanying benefits to that. So I would ask that that be a friendly amendment so that the numbers will come out right.
Okay, so I have a motion to, that's an amendment
It's amendment to include the benefit portion so that we have that in
That's
there
a
because it
friendly
was in the other budget,
amendment.
but in what we're talking about now, it wasn't. So I want to make sure we include that.
J.B. Harbison?
Now, the prosecutor, you had 7 law clerk, but part-time, 5?
5.
And how many does the?
We only have
3.
3.
You have 3.
We're just increasing it.
So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to vote. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joe Maxwell?
Yes.
Gary McHenry?
Yes.
Joe Patterson? Butch Pond?
Yes.
Bill Essery? Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
Yes.
Lisa Ecke?
Yes.
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, guys. The next thing I have is citizens' comments. Do I have a? Yes, ma'am. Come forward and identify yourself, please.
Okay. I only want to identify myself if my name will not be in the newspaper. So.
I can't guarantee you that, ma'am.
No.
We'll need
I
your-
work on an anti-methamphetamine campaign, and my name just can't be out there.
Is that a problem?
I work with
Judge, it's not,
undercover
it's,
people, and I beg your pardon?
Hang on just a moment.
it's not a requirement, legal requirement that you disclose her name. It's a requirement of the court.
For the record, yeah.
And y'all can waive it. So
You're on TV, ma'am.
Oh, great. No. Okay. Well, where does that go?
For everyone to see in the public,
Well,
just like.
I don't mind if y'all see me. I just don't want to be on television.
The public can witness this.
It's on television.
It's on television.
Oh, great.
So if
Was
you
it
don't-
on
if-
public access or what?
If you don't want to comment and you're not comfortable, I understand.
I'm going to make the comments anyway.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm just not going to tell you my name. And I can't even imagine that the meth freaks in this town would watch something like this.
You have 3 minutes, and please go
Okay,
forward.
thank you. I started working on the anti-methamphetamine campaign back when Terry Jones was here with us and when Governor Asa Hutchinson was the U.S. drug czar. And this problem has gotten worse and worse and worse in this town. I'm sure y'all are aware of that. There's some real problems. And the reason I'm here, and I know we can't do anything about the budget that y'all have already approved, but I'm saying this for future reference. We have to do something here. There has to be more money for the prosecutor's office and for the sheriff's department and the jail. There just has to be. We are turning hardcore, scary people back out. They're bonding out for practically nothing. I'm going to give you an example. Recently, in the newspaper, there was an article about a man who fled from the police at 90 miles an hour through our neighborhoods. He hit a police car, and that was the first of 2 chases where the police had to let him go because they were going to kill somebody. That man was finally arrested over in Oklahoma, sent back here, and he was able to. He had fleeing and aggravated assault charges against him, and a record as tall as this room, including manslaughter. He was able to bond out of our jail for $250. And 12 days later, he was arrested on my property here in Fayetteville, and he and apparently 15 other needle-using meth people had moved into my house while I was in my home in Iowa. I have 2 homes. I have one here and I have one in Iowa. They moved into my house apparently for about a week and we're in a big lawsuit mess right now. Been hauling stuff off of my property. There's 3 homes and 2 storage sheds, and they took my furniture. They took everything. They took my boxes of permanent records, dumped them out in my house, my beautiful little house, and packed in laundry detergent, Windex, and potting soil. My Social Security records have disappeared, my bank records have disappeared, and so now I've got this huge threat ahead of me. The police tell me my house was full of needles and vodka bottles. That happened 12 days after he got out of jail for $250. And I live on the south side of Mount Sequoia. 1 minute off the back of my property is Sequoia Preserve. Dan Cootie's house, Dr. McCracken, and everybody up there. Y'all know where that is. All in the woods back behind my place is camp after camp after camp. These homeless meth freaks are all over our town. And if we have to raise the taxes to clean this up, then that's what we're going to have to do. There's a huge number of people working behind the scenes now at the federal level and everywhere to try and help with this mess. But, okay, well, I've made my point. So next year when y'all do your budget, will you please see that more money goes for those departments? Thank you.
So, second.
Had one comment, because it all came up. I do mow lawns on the weekend, and I charge $65 an hour.